laying there, overweight, mohawk, heads cracked wide open, covered in blood, naked, sides split wide open. And not to mention I had like holes all through my body from the rocks. Like I had chunks of meat hanging out, my legs, my arms. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
making you too uncomfortable?
No.
Okay.
No, it's hard to make me uncomfortable at this point. No, that's not a challenge.
Yeah.
But
I'm not.
I've
not
heard
taking it.
a lot.
Yeah, they actually were calling my time of death, and he was begging and pleading with them to try one more thing. So just like Pulp Fiction, they took a big needle with adrenaline, epinephrine, and jammed it straight into my sternum, into the heart.
Welcome to the Barbells and Bourbon podcast, where you will find strength in stories from the comfort of my home. I am your big, bald-bearded, barbell-lifting, bourbon-drinking son of a bitch, Sean. And joining me today is Ray Chobanian.
Good job.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
We're off to a good start.
We are.
Pronounce your name right.
That's right. Yeah.
Welcome to our home, Ray.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me to your home. I really appreciate it.
I have a very interesting question to start out, and I've never asked this question to anybody before. But have you ever flushed the toilet and saw yourself spinning down that drain?
Yes. That's a very interesting question that you ask.
Explain, please.
Yeah. So, man, that's a good, interesting first question. So yes, I have actually. I was probably 18 or 19 years old, and I was deep into addiction, which I'm sure we'll talk more about. But I had an apartment by myself in kind of like a Section 8 kind of ghetto kind of a apartment complex, and just kind of paint a picture. And I remember I had a couple people over. I had parties there all the time, and I had a couple people over one night, and I was real messed up, and I had went to the bathroom. They were out doing their thing in the living room, and just listening to music and stuff and hanging out. And I went to the bathroom, and after I was done, I went to flush the toilet, and just watching the water spin. And I was kind of in a low place, like not just physically, but mentally and spiritually too. I was in a, things were coming to a head in that whole life at that time. And yeah, I literally thought that, like, this is like a great metaphor for my life. Why that came to me in that moment, I don't know. And then the interesting part about the question is, later on, a guy that's actually been on this show, I was talking to him, and he has a similar struggle with addiction and things. And I remember he was kind of getting heavier into things, and I just kind of pulled him aside, man. I'm like, your life is gonna go to crap, like, if you keep going down this road. And I specifically said, did you ever like stand at the toilet and just watch your turd go down the drain? I said, that's your life. Like, think of that. Every time you go to the bathroom, think of that piece of crap. That's what your life is, and that's where it's heading, So that's a really interesting question, because he even came back to me years later and said, hey, you remember when you, and he would like speak about it and stuff. Remember when you said that to me? He's like, that just like really hit him, I guess, in the right spot at the right time. So that always stuck with me. So that's a very interesting first opening question.
Yeah. I figured it would be. Now, the gentleman that you're speaking of is Patrick Bibbs.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid to mention his name, because he did sit in that seat, and he opened up about his entire life, including his addiction. So it's not like I'm putting him on the spot here. But so was Patrick struggling before you?
I don't think so. No, I think I was into it a while before him. He might have, did a little bit of partying here and there, but I don't think he was like really deep into anything before me. I think that was probably a few years after me, at least a few years. Yeah, maybe more.
But you found sobriety before him.
That's a good question. I think so. I don't know how much. I think so. I think Pat might have a couple years or something. I'm not sure. But my sobriety date, by the way, is November 25th, 2014. So a little over 10 years. So last November we celebrated 10 years. Yeah.
Congrats, man.
Thanks,
That's
man.
Amazing.
It's unfathomable, ineffable. I don't really even have the words because I never thought that could be me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty deep into things.
So, Ray, we spoke on the phone for about 15 minutes
Hmm.
before today. That is the only time that we've spoken. That's all I know of you is 15 minutes worth of a phone conversation. In that conversation, I asked you, did something drive you to that point? And you said there were a couple things.
Yeah,
And we're going to talk about those things if you're willing.
absolutely.
But for those who are addicted, if you're out there watching this right now, there is hope. Ray is proof of that. If you're not in recovery, if you've never been addicted, this is still going to be motivational to you because it's going to show his strength and hopefully give you some strength if you're struggling with anything, even if it's not addiction. So I want to flash back a little bit and start with your childhood because that stems all of possible struggles that you've dealt with, right?
100%.
So where did you grow up originally?
So I was born in Virginia, and so age of 4 or 5, we moved to Pennsylvania, Natrona Heights. So I went to Highlands High School and kind of graduated from there. Well, dropped out in senior year, but that's another story. Got my GED though, but just didn't have the heart for it anymore. But so yeah, grew up there, Virginia till I was 4 or 5. Moved to Natrona Heights. Spent most of my life there. Lived a couple other places around. Now I live in Pittsburgh now, pretty much 5 minutes from downtown.
Okay.
So yeah. So getting into kind of the events that happened, I was a really good kid. I listened to my parents. I thought life was great. I felt like as a child, it's interesting. So I have a lot of, I forget a lot of things, but I also have a lot of memories from very, very young. Like I definitely remember some things very clearly. And so I was just a happy kid. Like I said, I listened to my parents. I just had a natural kind of like gentleness to me, and my heart was like softer,
Yeah.
like my heart was I just didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want to do bad things. I just had a natural propensity to kind of shy away from any kind of stuff like that, or the neighborhood kids like wanting to go vandalize property. So I was just like, it made me feel really bad just hearing it as a
Yeah.
kid.
Now, was that, not to interrupt you, but was
Yeah.
that ingrained from your parents?
Well, my parents did put a lot of good morals and stuff and values in me. They were both Christian, so they definitely raised me with an open Bible and sharing Bible stories and things like that. So a lot of that stuff came from that. And my parents took time, especially my mom, because my dad was working a lot. But so my mom really took time with me to explain things, not just like tell me or boss me around, but explain
Because I said
why.
so.
Yeah.
There was some justification behind it.
Yes, like don't do that because it will hurt you, or it will burn you or whatever, So I was always kind of naturally curious though, but that comes into play later. But so yeah, at the age of 12, and I didn't know there was anything going on like behind the scenes, but at the age of 12, my mom just one day told me that she was going to leave my dad, and I was like, I didn't really know if I believed it. I couldn't really understand everything, and there were issues there. Although they were both Christian, they were very different belief systems in Christianity, if you will. And and there was a massive age gap. So, like my mom was 29 and my dad was 61 when I was born. So yeah, my dad was actually a Marine in World War II, and I'm 39 right now.
Wow.
So yeah, my dad who raised me was a Marine in World War II. Yeah.
Is he still living?
No, he passed like heck, it's been 10 years. Just past the 10-year anniversary actually. Yeah. It was shortly after I went to get clean the last time he passed away. Yeah. So that was tough. I had 3 months clean after almost 2 decades of using and not feeling anything. So that was interesting. Yeah. But
Yeah.
but anyway, so backtrack to when I'm 12 years old, my mom breaks this news to me, and so she did, and she just like left one day, and I mean, I understand now in my adult years, but at the time I didn't think I'd ever like forgive my mom because I was raised, here's really what was like the catalyst I'd say that kind of sent me down the path I chose was I was raised with all these, what I would say, good morals, values, respect people, all kinds of, things like that. And it felt like the rug was pulled out from underneath me because I didn't understand, like, they would talk to me about relationships and how to treat a lady when I got older, and kind of just trying to help me in my youth to prepare me for when I was an adult, and they did that. But that crushed me on a level, like, it just totally, it was like my whole foundation and every kind of like belief I had was like shattered. Like I said, it was just like the rug was pulled out from underneath me and I was falling, on my back, but I never felt like I hit anything. I just kept falling and I
It's
was
like
just
you were
like shattered.
betrayed.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
betrayed, yeah, just completely shattered. And it just so happened around that time, I was hanging out with some kids in school who smoked weed and did some other things here and there, smoked cigarettes, drink. And so that kind of, I was even scared to do it, like smoke weed the first time. Because like I said, I really didn't have that about me. And, but eventually I did it. And, yeah, and one thing kind of led into another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when your mom left, you felt betrayed. You were
Mhm.
probably angry with her. Do you think that you might have been able to handle something that traumatic a little bit better if your childhood wasn't so normal? Because you really didn't deal with any adversity up until that point, right?
Uh, a little bit of like getting picked on in school because I was really overweight. So I mean, that really had a factor in it too. I didn't know how to deal with that. But if my upbringing was more chaotic, maybe it would have made a little, like, not been as much of a soul crusher, if you will,
Right.
to me. But it's hard to say. But it's
I know that's
possible.
all hindsight.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm going to call my dad out. Hi, Dad. Love you. He watches all these, so he's
Oh,
definitely going to
very
see
cool.
this. But he always says after watching these episodes, he always says to me, man, my life was really easy. I lived a really soft life because he didn't deal with really any problems. He lived a very normal life. And that's kind of what made me think about asking you that question is, if things are so smooth for so long, any little ripple in the water is just, you're sunk.
Right. Yeah.
So that was just kind
No,
of
I get it.
the
I
analogy,
agree. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the struggles we go through that shape us and help us to, hopefully, if we choose to, better be able to handle things down the road that come up in life, because life happens, right?
Yeah.
Life on life's terms. So, yeah, I think we'll get more into it. But if it wasn't for all the bad, I mean, I wouldn't be who I am today. And I've met people too who haven't really had bad things happen to them, and like you said, one little thing, and it's like their whole world's like crumbling. I'm like, like, has anything ever bad happened to you? I know, and I'm like, wow, okay,
Well, you're
but
lucky
yeah,
in one
and in
sense,
one
but
sense,
yeah.
right, save some pain and suffering, but there's another side to it. Yeah,
Yeah. And I'm not saying that you need to have bad things happen to you
right,
to be
right,
able to get through trauma and trouble, but
right.
sometimes it just takes the edge off a little bit if you've already been dealt a bad deck,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Things that come up in life, everyday life, it's just that might trouble some. It's like that's it.
Yeah.
Once you've been through so many like hits. Yeah.
Yeah. So your mom leaves and you start maybe hanging out with the wrong people and making some bad choices. Where does that lead you?
Oh man. Uh so for me, it escalated very quickly. Like I said, I one day after school I tried a cigarette with some friends, and then a week or two later, smoking weed, hitting it, with some friends behind a old place in an alley, after school. And I remember that same, it was a Friday after school. In that same instance, I had a friend who was putting like a little tiny square piece of paper on his tongue. And I was like, what's that? And it's acid. I said, acid. And I'm like, what's that? He's like, well, it's a really powerful psychedelic. And I'm like, don't ever, if I ever ask for that, don't give it to me. Don't ever give that to me. It kind of scared me, but I also had this incredible curiosity about how things could affect you and make you feel different and perceive reality different. And I always seemed to have even as a little kid before my parents, like I remember like watching documentaries on TV or something about psychedelics and the effects, and I was just like, how is that like how could that make you like that? You know, I always had this a very strong pull actually of curiosity in that field of how things can affect you. So anyway, the next weekend, make a long story short, I was asking for it. And so I was always the guy doing it by myself, like the weekend after everybody, the group of friends there was doing it. So for whatever reason, that's just how it was. But so it went from a cigarette to a couple weeks later smoking weed to the next weekend dropping acid. The next weekend, you know, was on to something else, and a lot of different psychedelics and things. And then at 13, so that was when I was 12. And then by the time when I was 13, somewhere in that 13 to 14 year, um, I was introduced to heroin by somebody, and I sniffed it my first time. And, you know, I threw up like 42, 43, 40 some times that night because it's just a very powerful substance, especially for a 13-year-old that's never, you know, and so my brain wasn't even fully developed yet at that age. And I'm starting to kind of do these mood and mind altering substances. And by the time I was 14, I it got to the point where one of my friends, I had like one guy who I did a lot of, he was like, we were like partners in crime, you know, and he was who I smoked my first cigarette with, first joint, first pretty much most things. And he was like, you know, you don't need as much if you inject it. And so you can save money. It's cheaper. And like one part, we'll just say one portion can last you 4 times as long and do like 5 or 10 times as much of an effect on you
What
at
a
that point.
what a gentleman.
Yeah.
To give you such
Yeah.
great advice.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. Well, we were young and dumb. Fortunately, he's still alive and clean today. I'll just say that. But yeah, so I didn't know anything, and I was too scared to inject myself. So I asked him to do it, and he agreed to do that. So he did. And from there, it escalated very quickly. So when I was 15, by the time I was 15 years old, I was what I would consider a full-blown addict, junkie, ripping and running, shooting up multiple times a day. I mean, I was completely addicted and deep into that life by the time I was 15 years old. I mean, all the stuff that goes along with that, you know, like, so it progressed really quickly for me. And
Yeah.
there was something in me that always just kind of wanted to see, and I feel like a lot of addicts might have this personality trait, but I just always kind of want to see how far I could push it. Like, how far can I take this? And I learned how far I could take it. So that's kind of the start of it. And then when I was 19, so I'm still doing all this stuff all those years. And I mean, it got to the point where, I mean, I had like a $300 to $500 a day habit just in heroin, you know. And this was before fentanyl was a thing. So
Where are you living during this between
time,
13 and 19?
so most of the time I was living in Natrona Heights, Pennsylvania. When my parents split up a little after I moved out to Deer Lakes, like my sophomore year of high school. So I was still partying out there and stuff a little bit, but
Are you with your dad?
I was with my dad for a little bit at the house, and then when that kind of split up, he went somewhere and I went with my mom.
So
So
you're still with a parent throughout
yes,
this whole thing.
yes. Up until 18, 2 weeks after I turned 18, I got my own place at this like apartment complex. So literally 2 weeks after I was in there. So that probably wasn't good, but you know, because then I'm even more to my own devices and have more freedom to do what I want. And somehow I made that all work. I mean, it was a low income housing, so it's not like rent was super expensive. And my dad helped me some with like money at that point, like groceries and stuff, because I was just a strung out teenager. Like the thing is, though, it was all because of the pain of that, like my parents' separation and me being 12 years old, not knowing how to deal with that. Um, it might sound silly to some, but for me, that's what the catalyst was. That was like the tipping point.
Was that to numb yourself? Was that to get back at your parents? Like, what were you thinking, if you can think
Yeah.
back to that point?
Well, it was definitely to numb myself for one. And a little bit, maybe part of it in me was to kind of get back at my parents. Like, you hurt me so bad, I'm going to hurt myself more. And you guys don't like this, that I'm doing this. And they were all, my parents, more so my dad, but was extremely strict. So, like I said, he was a Marine in World War II. So he like ruled the household with an iron fist. And that's part of the reason why my parents, relationship fizzled away. But like, if he told me, and I feel like it's a lot of old school kind of upbringing. Like, if he told me to be home at 8 p.m. and I was home at 8:01, I was getting it. Like, there was no, it was very strict. Even like how I dressed, the way I combed my hair. Um, I wasn't allowed to have video game systems for a long time. Just a lot of things, like who I hung out, and I get some of it, but some of it was very, I felt very constricted all the time. It was always a battle. Like, if I wanted like a pair of jeans that were a little looser, it was a battle. And my mom would usually like go to bat for me
Yeah.
and try to have it out with him in a sense, and to get, like, he just wants a pair of pants that are more comfortable, like things like that.
Were you afraid of them?
I had what I would say a healthy fear of my dad for most of my life. Yeah.
A heavy respect, maybe
Yeah,
a better way to
yeah,
phrase it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I did. Respect was probably his biggest thing that he wanted to ingrain in me, was respecting people. And like, to the point, my parents would tell me, my dad, like, when you're walking home from school, because at one point I would walk home, it wasn't that far, and you don't even so much, you walk on the sidewalk. You don't even let your foot brush against a blade of grass that's not yours. And I'm like, really? Like, I thought, I didn't know if he really meant that. He's like, yeah, you do not touch another person's property, don't, not even a blade of grass, unless they tell you you can. So it was like very in line, kind of respectful, very strict,
I think this world needs some of your dad right now.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree, because it's complete opposite today,
Yeah.
and we can see the results of that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I don't want to veer off track there,
yeah,
but
I agree.
this world needs some discipline,
Yes,
right?
yes, it does.
Now, you said that you were afraid. We'll just say you didn't want to disappoint your parents, right? Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
But you went off the rails. You had no care about disappointing your parents at that point, right?
Right.
And that's because they hurt you.
I think so. The hurt and the, like, strictness, I think, of the environment too, was just, and then it was kind of like a holy wars in the house as well. So I had that on top of it. So there's a lot more layers to it. But so my mom was and still is Jehovah's Witness, and my dad grew up Catholic but later became Presbyterian. So there's some major differences in those two belief systems, and holidays being one of them. Like, Jehovah's Witnesses don't celebrate any holidays, and including birthdays. My dad did. And so my dad wanted me to experience holidays like Christmas and birthdays, and so did his whole side of the family, all my aunts and uncles on that side. And so my mom doesn't, she believes that those are all like bad things, to just put it simply.
Yeah.
Okay. We're not getting into all that. But, and so there, you don't really think about it, but there's like about 12 holidays a year. So it's almost all the time there's a holiday or one coming up, and so it was like almost a constant thing in the household of this fighting. And my dad wanting to put up a Christmas tree and have an actual Christmas and gifts and things like that, and my mom not having her views about it. And for example, so there was this holy wars in the house. So, and I would just sit there as a kid and be like, if this is the way these kind of things are, the holidays and stuff, like, I really don't, like, I can do without it. I don't really want anything to do with it.
What's there to celebrate?
There wasn't.
Right?
Yeah, it's always a battle. So that was another layer. So to get back to the point, I rebelled to the nth degree, as much as I could think of how to rebel. Like, I had a mohawk that was taller than this, blue like spikes, and I had purple, blue. I wore like back in that time it was like the Janko jeans and
Yep.
stuff. So I'd wear like the bondage with the chains and an X, and stuff, and just I was just wild. I was into like really like death metal and still like metal, by the
Yeah.
way. Nothing wrong
Nothing
with
wrong with
that. Yeah,
that.
yeah. But I was into like really dark things and
I'm surprised you're not all tatted up.
yeah, I know. I don't have a single tattoo.
Hmm.
A lot of people say I played in bands and stuff. I play guitar, but
Yeah.
I've never. Nope. I just never had a desire or draw or like, let me get a tattoo. Just
Yeah.
never. Yeah,
It just
never.
feels like it would have fit with your
Oh
look.
yeah,
That's all.
yeah. You're not the first person to say that.
Yeah.
It definitely would have. So for me, it was like rebel, rebel, rebel. I was just really hurt, and I didn't have at that age. I didn't have anyone to kind of help steer me, like a mentor. My parents were pretty caught up with the divorce stuff, and moving new places, getting rid of all they knew, their whole life they had built together, and so they were kind of caught up with that. And frankly, I didn't really want to talk to either one of them, and I didn't really know how to. And so I was kind of left to my own devices in a sense, and I would just kind of run wild. But
So you're essentially isolated from your family, right?
yeah, yeah, for the most part. And my mom worked; she had to work. So like during the day, um, I was supposed to be in school, like high school, and I mean, my last 2 years of high school, I missed close to 300 days, like 200 some days. I would go in, maybe check into homeroom, and then just leave with my one friend, same one who I did started things with, and we would just go, scheme ways of getting money and getting drugs and getting high all day on whatever we could get our hands on.
Wow.
Yeah, that was really the life.
I don't think can get away with that these days.
Not as easy. People, the same schemes and scams you used to do back then, a lot of places and people have caught on to, for sure. But I don't know. Like I've been out of it for 10 years. Fortunately, I don't have to kind of,
Yeah.
I know what I did, and I've heard what a lot of other people have done, and there's similarities for sure.
Did your parents have any clue the life that you were living?
My dad at first did not. I remember when I was 12 years old, he caught me smoking a cigarette and he was like really irate in the backyard before this was like right before that all happened. So I had started, like I said, I started this stuff before my parents actually split up, just separated. So like cigarette, weed, and I think some psychedelics a little bit, but then it was very shortly after that. So I was already kind of primed. But my mom, you know, I did tell her like I tried weed, but um, my dad for a long time denied it. And I don't think he really had the awareness to see it, or I think my mom did have more an awareness of what that looks like on a person because her mother was an alcoholic. A lot of times that happens. It kind of runs through the generations sometimes. So she knew kind of what that looked like on a person. Where my dad, he was just like he drank heavy in the military, and he smoked 3 packs of Camel non-filters a day, and like one day he just quit. And so he would always tell me, "You just quit. You just set your mind to it, and you're just done." And I said, "Well, Dad, that's awesome, like that you are like that, but for me, it's not how it is. Like that's not my experience at all. Like I don't know how you do that. For me, it's hard to even believe that." He was telling me the truth about that. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
Like
cold
so,
turkey to that extreme.
yeah, and he had a family before he was married once, and before my mom, and he said he had his one daughter was very young, and he overheard her praying one night, God, please make my dad quit smoking. And he heard that prayer and he said he always wore like a shirt with a pocket. He said he took the Camel non-filters and ripped them in half, threw them in the garbage, and never touched them again, ever. Never touched one again.
Damn.
And so I was like, I I didn't understand that at all.
Hmm.
So yeah, but that's how he was. Yeah, wasn't how I am though.
I don't think too many people
No,
are,
I
honestly.
don't. I
Like I
don't
said, the
either.
world needs more of your
Yeah,
dad.
yeah.
He just needs to sprinkle from heaven a little bit of his mojo.
Yeah, yeah, definitely had a lot of good things from like how things used to be a long time. I mean, he
Yeah,
was born in 1925, like Great Depression, so
that's
my
a
dad,
different way of living.
very much so. Yeah, so he had a lot of good things, But then there was also a lot of things that, like anybody.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So Ray, you're 19 or so at this point in time.
Yes.
Did you have any relationships, any girlfriends or boyfriends? If you're
Yeah.
not, there's
No,
anything wrong
no,
with that, but yeah.
I'm a straight man. Yeah. So I had, when I was like 19 in that area, yes, I did have a girlfriend who I actually got engaged to. Um, and she actually did live with me at the place I had for, I think, about a year. And then that ended for, some other reasons, but it ended on for good reasons. But yeah, I did. And, unfortunately, I kind of got her into things, just being honest. She, smoked some weed and stuff and popped a few pills here and there, but she wasn't like doing heroin and
Yeah.
everything, crack, because I got into all that stuff. So yeah, we were together for a while, and I, she cheated on me with one of my very close friends, and I threw her out. So that's kind of what happened there. And that wasn't good either. I mean, because I was already not in my right state of mind. So when bigger things like that happen, it always sent me over the edge even more. Like now I'm going even harder. So a little while after that, if I can, a pretty major event happened in my life. First of some, but me and the same guy I always got high with and since middle school, and another friend of ours, we went and got our drugs and came back to my place to shoot up, all three of us. And my friend went first, and he fell to the floor, just like went out, started turning blue very quick, and the needle was still in his arm. So I pulled the needle out of his arm and did CPR on him and got him back. And I was like, if you're an opiate user or heroin, this, like, wow, that must be really good stuff. My turn to go now. Like, I see what it did, really messed him up. And like I said, I always wanted to push things to see how far I could take it. So I remember very clearly um, filling up my needle full, and it was like espresso. It was I couldn't even see through it. And I injected it all. And within a 3 to 5 second window, I start feeling like a million bees are just stinging me everywhere. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, and it's just coming on harder and harder and stronger. And I'm like, this is definitely like the highest I've ever been in my life. This is crazy. And I'm like, okay. And then it would get more intense, and it just kept going and going. I'm like, oh my. And so I was to the point where I didn't even know how to compose myself. And I just remember like holding my head like this, like, oh man. And one of my friends was like, man, you all right? I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. And I didn't know if I should like sit, stand, if I should try to talk to him. I didn't know if I should. I was being overtaken by this feeling. And for whatever reason, I still this day don't understand why. I think I was just so overwhelmed with this intensity that just kept coming and coming. I kneeled down and I put the left side of my head on my couch, and I'm like, oh, I should get up. And I stood up, and that's all I remember. And so I actually had my first near-death experience at that time, where I was suddenly aware that I was in a black room. It was like a big pitch black room, but it felt like it was a room of some sort, maybe, or a chamber or a hall. So it was very like reverbial, like echoey and reverb in this place. Like, and I'm just like thinking, I was like not speaking in this state. I was thinking like, uh-oh, like what's going on? And as soon as I thought that, I heard this very firm yet gentle, hard to, like a very like strong but gentle voice, male voice, which I believe to be the voice of God to this day. I really do. Say, it's going to be okay. And I thought, and so I'm feeling in that moment right before that. This is very important because I started to feel all the pain that I ever caused anybody and all the pain that I would cause people from my death in the future. It was like somehow I knew that's what it was. I don't know how to explain it, but that was my experience in the moment. And so this overwhelming dread is just consuming whatever is left of me in this state that I'm in. And then I hear the voice say, "It's okay." And it just boomed, but echoed in this pitch black chamber that I was in. And it was like I was laying on my back, but in this chamber. And he just kept repeating, "It's gonna be okay. Like, it's okay. It's okay." Like a few times. And I just felt this overwhelming sense of love and peace and serenity that I've never to this day experienced anything like that. It was just like it all just washed away just effortlessly, and I just felt it's unexcribable. I just immense love, peace, serenity, like a calm water on a nice summer day. Just peaceful.
Just absolute
Yeah,
comfort.
yeah. Like if you were the water, just resting on it was like that was me in that moment. And then I opened my eyes, and I first thing I see are like a couple police officers, and actually right before that, the first thing I saw was a girl who I used to go to school with that we didn't like each other at all. Like I just did not care for her. And she was training to be a medic in EMS, and here she was over top of me, reviving me, resuscitating me, this girl that I could not stand. So there's a lot of lessons, you could pick from this.
Yeah.
So there's this person I cannot stand, and there she is bringing me back
Saving
to
your
life.
life.
Yeah. So, and then, so then I saw the two police officers, and then to the left of them, I see my mom, and she's wearing her coat because this was in heck, it was like right before my 19th birthday. I think it was like it had to be in January or end of January. Like it was very close to my birthday, and I see my mom there, so it's cold, and she has her coat on. She's just crying, and I look down and my arm's all bloody because they like hit me with Narcan multiple times, and they usually don't do that. And so they take me out on a stretcher into the ambulance, and I hear this engine roaring coming up the driveway into the apartment complex, and it's my mom from work. Someone had called her while she was at work, so I'm really confused. So I was having like vivid hallucinations coming out of this, and I legitimately saw my mom there crying in her clothes that she left in that day, her coat that she always wore, during that time, and then there she is coming in her car, and I'm just like trying to. I'm so messed up, I don't even know. I'm just there, and I'm just trying to process everything that just happened, and I was so high. It was such a large amount of heroin that I injected that they hit me with Narcan. I was told 4 times, which is hard to believe. That didn't do anything. They hit me with a defibrillator. It didn't do anything. And oddly enough, see, the guy I resuscitated after I overdosed, they both took the rest of my drugs, and I guess I wouldn't need them anymore, and took off, supposedly. But there was a neighbor that lived downstairs. We were like very close, and he would just sometimes come up and just walk in, and he just so happened to walk in that day. And I later got the story that he like yelled at them to leave, that he was going to beat them up or something, and they left. Maybe, I don't know. I don't really care. It doesn't matter to me anymore. But so he ended up calling the ambulance. So I'm laying there like dead. And he called the ambulance, and they told me I was dead for 16 and a half minutes. Yeah, 16 and a half minutes. Yeah, they actually were calling my time of death, and he was begging and pleading with them to try one more thing. They hit me with Narcan multiple times, hit me with a defibrillator. And the story I got from him was they said, well, I guess we could try one more thing. So just like Pulp Fiction, they took a big needle with adrenaline,
Adrenaline.
epinephrine, and jammed it straight into my sternum, into the heart. And I felt for a couple of days after, like I got hit with a baseball bat in the chest, and that barely brought me back. I just remember like very slowly opening my eyes, and so yeah, so I was after all that, after the adrenaline and the shots of Narcan, I was so high, I was still throwing up for 24 hours after that. So I had to have just such a massive dose in my system that it's, in my personal estimation, it's a miracle that I can't. I mean, after being dead over 16 minutes,
Yeah.
usually your brain, there's no going back from that. If you come back, you're like a vegetable, So um, that was opportunity number one, or chance number two, however you want to describe it. So I made a decision. This is even crazier in my perspective, because I said, okay, I see how far I can take this. I said, I can't take it any more than that. Like, I literally died and came back. I had a near death experience. I said, there's nowhere else to go with that. Like, okay, this is how far I can take it. So I said, I have to quit. And at the time, I have a several $100 a day habit. And so when I got back home, I closed all my blinds, locked the door, turned my phone off, and I just decided I'm just going to go through this withdrawal alone here and just do it. And I just set my mind to just willpower alone. I'm just doing this. And so for the next 2 weeks, I laid in the center of my bed with every blanket and comforter I had in my house on top of me. I mean, piled like this high on top of me. I'm so cold and I am so sick. I mean, I really can't even do it justice describing it, what I experienced through that. But I couldn't eat, I couldn't move. I just laid there, and it was like every cell of my being was in a vice. And the vice just kept tightening and tightening. That's how everything felt. It was very overwhelming. There was no sleep. I didn't eat. I could not, literally physically could not move for 2 weeks. And so I didn't have any food. I felt my organs shriveling up inside of me. Like, I literally could feel everything shriveling up. And right at the 2 week mark, I was able to kind of move. And I remember crawling. I had like tremors and stuff. I was crawling with all the strength I had to the bathroom, and I'm like shaking, and I reach up to the faucet and turn it on, and I got my hand wet, and I'm like this, and I put a drop of water on my tongue, one drop, and it made me so sick. I didn't have anything in me anymore, and so I started puking up my stomach lining. My stomach lining was coming out into the toilet. I'm dry heaving so hard that my stomach is like
falling apart.
Yeah. So it was bad. I don't know how I survived that either. And so another week passes, so I'm at 3 weeks now, and I'm like laying there on my bed, and it's just like, it just kind of left. It just like, it was like it lifted. And I was like, ah. And I just remember like gasping, like, after like 3 weeks of that, it was very incredible. And so I said, well, I don't ever want to do that again. I got through that just at this point I never went to any kind of like NA or AA meetings or rehabs or counseling, therapy, nothing like that. I had no idea about that whole world out there. And it was just on willpower alone. So I didn't know any kind of things. Like, I never thought I was an addict, like I just thought heroin is the problem. I used to think if I could just get rid of heroin, everything would be fine, like my life would be fine. It's this substance that is wrecking my life, and I just need to get rid of that. And I got rid of that, and my life was still a wreck. And I'm like, man, so I actually stayed clean off of heroin for at least 2 years. I think actually like 4 years. I think it was 4 years.
So what were you doing? So you broke the heroin habit.
Yes.
What else were you still doing?
So I had actually, I think, about 2 solid years clean off everything, just on willpower and just because I didn't want to die,
Now, was that post-withdrawal, that 3
Yes.
weeks of hell, was that the starting point of your 2 years of sobriety?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, if I did I don't think I even like took a hit of weed or anything in that 2 years, but then it kind of started again where I would take a couple of hits of weed. I'd have a beer or two or a 40, and then, I might pop a couple pills here or there. And I thought that was okay. I thought I could just live that way. But
Social,
yeah, like,
recreational fun.
right.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, that's like, I didn't see any problem with that at that time. So think we need to backtrack a tiny bit though, because after the overdose at 19, I had 3 months from that overdose almost to the day. And so now it's summer because this was like uh, right beginning of February. I think it was actually 2 days before my birthday. So it had to have been like February 1st, 2nd, something like that. Me and some friends, one, the same guy who came in and called the ambulance when I was overdosed, me, him, and a couple other people decided to go fishing. By the Lock 4 Dam in Natrona, Pennsylvania. Um, and at the time, it was a little different then. I've been there more recently, and it's not. But they had this river. The river bank had all kinds of boulders on it. You had to walk down to get to the river to fish. And I mean, I had like 8 fishing poles and this like wrapped with my arm, and I had a big cooler with all kinds of sandwiches and sodas and stuff. And we got to walk down all these boulders to get to the river. And honestly, man, right at the very top, I was taking my first step down and my toe got caught on a rock and it tripped me and I just tried to catch myself and all that did was give me more momentum. I went head first straight down over this river embankment with all these jagged rocks. And I always say, fortunately, a boulder caught my fall right here on my head. There's like a black mark there. But I landed head first for about 35 to 40 feet straight down on the sharp edge of a boulder, and it impacted right here. And it was like bone and sinew crushing. I just feel it and hear it through my whole being. And I came to an abrupt stop, and then my side hurt really bad. And I was pretty overweight at the time too. Thankfully, I think that kind of saved me. But I remember lifting up my shirt and I could like see my insides, like organs, and I just remember thinking, like, how am I alive? Like, how am I experiencing? I didn't think you could be, like, see your insides and be alive. I didn't know you could experience that. I was 19. I just didn't know that that could happen. And so I remember standing up, and the same friend that called the ambulance when I overdosed came running down. And fortunately, I had a cell phone in my pocket. I mean, this is back when, like, cell phones were still a pretty new thing, you know. And he pulled it out of my pocket and called 911. And I remember I stood up and I just remember saying, I need a cigarette. And this from here to here just fell. This whole flat from here like this, and it went back this way too. It was like cracked me like an egg. And this just fell. And it was just like a garden hose. It was like you could hear the blood leaving, and it was squirting out like, I don't know, 10, 12 feet. So we had some towels with us, and he's like panicking, and he puts this beach towel on my head. Within a matter of 10 seconds, the beach towel is completely saturated, dripping with blood. I mean, I see like there's blood flowing through the rocks beside me into the river and stuff. And they had to get a boat to come down, and so I'm like laying on all these rocks, and they had to cut off all my clothes. There's a bunch of people up at the top looking over, so I'm laying there, overweight, mohawk, heads cracked wide open, covered in blood, naked, sides split wide open. And not to mention I had like holes all through my body from the rocks. Like I had chunks of meat hanging out, my legs, my arms. Yeah, I mean, I had internal bleeding for like 2 months after this. My liver was bleeding and stuff. Like organs were, I was urinating blood for about 2 months after this. So they put me on the boat, took me down to a parking lot where they had a helicopter, life flighted me to Allegheny General Hospital, downtown Pittsburgh, Oakland. And that's on the helicopters when I had my second near-death experience. So I just remember the medics screaming at me, "Keep your eyes open, keep your eyes open." And this guy is screaming at me so like, and like with such energy that he's like spitting, and everything's gray. It's kind of like if you ever played Call of Duty and you're bleeding out and everything's gray and blurry and fuzzy. That was exactly what I was experiencing. And I just hear him whispering, "Keep your eyes open." But he's yelling. And I'm just like, I'm just so tired. I just want to go to sleep. And he's like, "Keep your eyes open." But I just hear, "Keep your eyes." Even though he's screaming, I just hear like a legitimate whisper. And in that moment, I'm like struggling to keep my eyes open. You're like, okay, okay. It was like a slideshow in Technicolor of my life. Scenes, like it was literally like slides that were like transparent, where I could see myself as a 3-year-old kid kicking the soccer ball in the yard and like hitting the dandelions and the little things going off the dandelions. And that would go to another scene in my life, or it would go to something where I did something to somebody, and or it would go something like my mom holding me as a baby, and it was like in an instant, but I experienced all these moments of my life. And the next thing I remembered was waking up in a wheelchair in the hospital and with a surgeon in front of me on the phone. And he has like some instruments in his hand and a saline bottle and like a needle, and he's on the phone. He's like, "Yeah, I got him here. It's not good, but I'm gonna see what I can do with him, and I think he's gonna survive, but I don't know. It's not looking very good though." And I'm like, I'm just kind of like coming to it. I'm thinking he's probably talking to another surgeon or something. And I later found out he was talking to my mom. And I'm like, so you're like cleaning me out and stuff, and you're on the phone with my mom. It was just weird. And so I sat there, and they couldn't give me anything to do surgery because turns out they told me precisely I lost 87% of the blood in my body.
Thank
Yeah.
God.
So we're talking like liters of blood. So 87% of the blood I lost in my body. I'm not sure if I got plasma expanders or a blood transfusion. I don't know. To this day, I don't know. I don't know what they did to help me start building blood back up. I don't think I got a transfusion. I don't know though. I really honestly, I never found out. And I've always kind of wanted to go back and figure that out. But so 4.5 hours I had to sit in this chair with like just, he was injecting Novocaine because he had to clean everything out. And like he was literally lifting up my skin and like squirting, and while I'm sitting there conscious for this, like there's no other way to do it. Um, 314 stitches from right here. The scars have healed decently, but
Yeah.
from right here back to here, and then the whole way down to here was split like right down to here. Um, and then 72 staples, surgical, steel staples. So, and they literally put them in like you would staple a piece of paper, and I'm just sitting there. So he's like taking this thing, he's like boom, and you can feel it bending on your skull, like the staples as they come under. So I look literally like Frankenstein. I have temporary amnesia. So if you'd be like, "Hey Ray, how you doing today?" By the time you got to the last word today, no recollection. Like I knew you just said something to me, but I would just look at you like really trying, like, what? Like I know you just said something, but I cannot remember what you just said. Like, and they told me, and this is a good lesson for never buying into a diagnosis for your life. But they told me every year it would progressively get worse, that I might start to get my memories back, but eventually I would forget all the closest people's names in my life. I might remember my own name, maybe. I would pretty much forget everything, and eventually I would be a vegetable by the age of, I think they said like 30, 25, 30. I'd be like a vegetable, and I'd have to be tube fed and taken care of. And I just remember being like, okay, like I hear you, and I didn't think anything else of it. I just, okay, I
Like,
hear what you're saying to me, and
like you accepted it, or you were
no,
just ignoring it?
I just neither. I wasn't accepting or rejecting. I just said, oh, okay, like I just heard what you said, kind of thing. Like
Acknowledged it.
yeah, I acknowledged it, yeah. Um, and I'm 39 today, but I had a struggle for a long time with the amnesia, and I couldn't even walk. I had to have some friends carry me because I lived up on the third floor in this apartment building. I had to have friends kind of like carry me up there, and my side they just they cleaned it and packed it. They didn't do any stitching, which I was like shocked, but they said that's the best way to heal that. So and I've talked to some other people, and they said, yeah, that sounds right. So yeah, I mean, I'm busted up, heads, I mean, I used to get like these cluster migraines that it just feel like a butcher knife is just sticking in my head this way and sticking in my head this way, and to the point I couldn't even walk. I mean, sometimes for a couple weeks, I would just have these. It would hurt so bad I couldn't. I would just lay in the fetal position, like, and I couldn't remember how to do things, and all the memories I had that were like good or bad or indifferent were just. It was like nothing had happened. It was and then nerve damage. So like to this day, I can't feel the top of my head. And my right leg on the right side the whole way down to like my knee. It's just numb. It's always been numb. So those were a couple things from that, but yeah, you look like you want to ask me
I
something.
I don't even know what to say, man.
Yeah,
Um, I do know what to say. Like this video because this story is insane. I said we spoke for 15 minutes.
mm,
I had a general idea of what we were going to talk about: addiction, marriage, childhood. I didn't know any of this. I didn't know about any near death experiences. This is shocking to me. So I'm just trying to like take
yeah,
this all in.
yeah,
Um, so you almost died 4 or 5 months before that. You heard the
yeah,
voice of God
yeah,
saying it's going to be okay.
yeah.
You almost died again.
Hmm.
Someone's whispering to you, keep your eyes open. Okay.
Yeah.
So escape death twice in a 5 month period.
Hmm.
How does your life go from that point? Are you feeling lucky? Are you feeling, like you said before, I want to see how far I can push it? I can't go down. I can't be killed. Let's go even harder. What did you do?
Um, you know, I don't know if I could really formulate those thoughts at that time. I would say I definitely had a very strong sense of gratitude for life and like I need to do something with my life that's worthwhile, like have a major impact in some way. Um, but I think I was just in so much like I mean, I couldn't think right and but I do remember so after I got home, I will say this. Uh, when I was in the hospital, I was only there 4 days from what I recall. But I was on a morphine drip and I got, so I only had a few months clean off of opiates. And then now I'm on morphine. They send me home with pills too, opiate pills. So when I'm home, I'm all alone by myself, laying in my bed, just all busted up. It's one night I'm like healing up, trying to heal. Uh, I'm going through withdrawal from the morphine. And I had these visions of I don't know why, but Native American Indians like in my room, and I'm seeing like their headdresses, and there's like eagles, and it's almost like I'm just in this vision, going through this withdrawal, um, and they're like, this is a rebirth, a reawakening. You need to be grateful for your life, and saying things like that, and I'm just like I feel tripped out. Like, I know I'm withdrawing from morphine. Like I'm aware of that, but I'm just like I don't understand why I'm having all this happen. And Native American Indians, like ancient Native Americans, I don't know why, but so there was this sense of like okay, like this is a rebirth kind of thing. I'd love to say that's where like it ended, but it didn't. Like my addiction, it did not end there. Even after both of those, I mean, I was diagnosed with hepatitis C when I was 18 from sharing needles with somebody, and after this accident and overdose and all that, I did stay clean actually. I didn't relapse at that point from the morphine and the pills they sent me home with somehow. Um, and so I started to get into shape and things and take care of myself a little bit. And I went to see a liver specialist. And make a long story short, he told me I needed to come in to talk about the results from my blood work because he wouldn't talk to me over the phone about it. And I'm like scared. And he's like, Mr. Chobanian, have a seat. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, just like what? So I'm like freaking out for days going up to this. I'm like, oh man, it must be bad. And he's like, I don't know how to explain this to you, but I've only seen this a time or two in my career. But somehow your body just beat the hepatitis. You no longer have any trace of it in your body. And I'm like, really? And so like for years after that, I got tested and things, and this was before they had any cure for hepatitis C like they do today. You can just take a pill for a little while and you're good, I guess. But so there was that on top of it, just at that point in my life. So there was a lot of things to be grateful for, but I still didn't have like a foundation of recovery or deal with the trauma properly from my parents, and that they were still both alive, and there was still a war. Tell her she's this, tell him he can't do it. And so I'm in the middle of it all the time, and that didn't help the addictive thing. But like I said, I stayed clean for a while. Actually, like I said, I got into bodybuilding. I went from 300 pounds down to 170, back up to 215 muscle. Took it on my own to go to technical school. I went to ITT Tech before they closed. Got a house, met a girl, got married to her when I was 22. Um, and like the local paper did a story on me because they just overheard about things. They did a story on like things were like it was like former drug users steps from shadows of addiction into new life, and then I relapsed. Towards the end of my marriage, that first marriage, and it just started with OxyContin, like a lot of people say, and uh, I was just doing it here and there, and me and my ex-wife, I was kind of spending a lot of money, and she was asking, and it got to the point I couldn't hide anymore. And her dad died while we were together of a overdose, we believe. I won't say any names or anything, but anyway, he died from what's appeared to be that. And so she was like having no part. She didn't want anything to do with that. And I was just like feeling broken and wanting some support, and there wasn't any there. And I don't blame her. I'm just saying that's where I was at the time. Nope, no hard feelings. But so now I'm like single again. Well, we're separated. We're separated, and I was working a couple hours away up north, and I came home for the weekend. I had just gotten paid, and I was at a car wash, and all I had was a $10 bill. Was the smallest bill I had on me, and I couldn't use it there. So I'm like going to the stall next to me, and there's a kid in there washing his car. And I said, "Hey man, excuse me." I'm like, "You wouldn't happen to have change for a 10, no?" And he turns around, and it's this kid that I know his older brother from high school, and I kind of knew what this kid was into. And he's like, "You're Ray Chobanian. I know you. You get it in, don't you?" He's like, "You party hard." And I'm like, "No, man, I don't. I've been clean for a while. Like, I'm not doing that. Even though I was still using the oxys here and there, but it wasn't like an everyday thing. But
Sure.
I'm like, "No, man, I don't do anything anymore." And he's like, "Well, I got these really good stamp bags," and he just like that, and he has these bags of heroin, and it's like right in my face. And I'm like, "No, no, no, man, I'm good, thanks." I'm like, "But do you have change for a 10?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I got you." So I go over and I'm starting to wash my car, and the wheels are turning, right? And man, it was like somebody put it from neutral into drive, and I felt like a click, and I felt something engage in my head. It was just like boom, drive. And I thought, well, I could just do one. And then I'm like, but looking back on my path, like you never just buy one, you get a deal on a few. So I'm like, well, maybe I can get a deal on a few. And so I go, oh, he's still there. And I go over and I'm like, yeah, man, let me, what do you do for me here? And I went home, and I'm like, I'll spread these out. And by the next day, they were all gone. And maybe a week or two later, I link back up with that old friend that I used to use with, because we weren't really doing a whole lot together anymore. And he was kind of doing his thing, and I was married now and doing mine. And we linked up, and he's like, would you go into Walmart and buy me some needles? And I'm like, no, man, that's not a good idea. And he's like, why not? Why not? Because I just don't want to be around the needles. I know where that leads. Like, as soon as you inject a substance, it becomes a whole another monster. It's a different effect. It's very different. And about an hour and a half later, he finally talks me into it. And I find myself sitting in the Walmart parking lot with a bag of needles with him. And I'm like, well, if you're going to shoot up, I'm going to shoot up too. And so dumb, I don't know, but that was just my thought at the time, and how I used to think, and my paradigm and mindset. And um, it was downhill from there, man. I mean, I had some other relationships. I ended up uh, homeless, on the streets, nowhere to go. I mean, there's so many things that happened in that time. I actually was hospitalized again because my liver shut down. Um, I got real sick. I was in my mid 20s, late 20s, and I got real sick to the point I take a sip of water, throw up. Take a bite of like a saltine cracker, throw up. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? And mind you, at the time, I'm like injecting multiple grams of MDMA with the heroin every day, like every day. I'm just going so hard. And you're not supposed to ingest MDMA that way. You're supposed to orally take it if you do. And so, but I'm just shooting like all day and night. And so I'm like literally just all I can see is white. I lose my vision and stuff. And one day I go to do a little bit and everything goes black and I go deaf. So I'm like deaf and blind and I'm like freaking out for like 20 minutes. I was deaf and blind and I don't understand what's wrong. I'm like thinking like am I going and I'm sick, you know, and I'm like am I going through withdrawal? Like I just did some a little bit ago. How could I so I'd do more and I'd feel sicker and I finally had a friend who was sober. Well, the one sober friend I had who came to see me and literally dragged me to the hospital because I didn't want to go. I had too many drugs and stuff. I just wanted to do my drugs. That was my life, you know. And uh, it turns out my liver was shutting down, man. And like my, not to be gross, but my urine looked like black tea. Like I wasn't processing anything anymore. My skin was yellow. Um, and they admitted me in the hospital and I got so sick in the hospital because now I'm going through withdrawal and I'm sick because of my liver, and liver sickness is no joke. It makes you very, very, very sick because toxins are just going into your body. I mean you're so sick. So I was so sick in the hospital I was literally begging the nurses for like euthanasia. I'm like, can you please like kill me? Like I'm not joke, please kill me. Or I have one nurse, I was like, hey, I'm like, could you like sneak in a gun? I'll do it. I won't say like I'll just you know, like I was
You're that low.
that's where I was at. I just wanted to die because it was so unbearable. And you know, all these years of this, and it's not the first time I've been through withdrawal. And it's just like you get tired. You know, you get tired of like the fight. And it was always a fight for me. And so they didn't do anything. The doctor just came in and said, you know, using needles is bad for you. And I was like, don't patronize me. What are you like? What are you in here for? Like, tell me what's wrong, you know? And so he's like, well, he's like, you have a hepatitis of the liver. It doesn't mean you have hepatitis A, B, or C. It just when your liver is sick, we call it hepatitis. And so your liver is very sick. And he's like, if you change your lifestyle, he's like, the liver is very resilient, fortunately. If you change your lifestyle and quit doing this, you're going to get better, but you can't go back to it because you could get very bad again quickly. And I'm like, okay, okay. So I'm in there. I even tried to get a friend to bring me drugs in, and I gave him the last money I had, and he never came back. So I'm like, so, because that was a little bit of hope I had. And at this point, I'm like, so hopeless, man. And I get out, and I'm like, okay, just don't shoot anything, but I can take it up my nose or just eat stuff, you know, like, and so that lasted for a few days after I got out, and then I just started shooting up again, man. And eventually, probably after I don't know 2 or 3 years of that, um, there was a day I had a girlfriend who wasn't into she drank some, but she wasn't into all this stuff, and she knew about my past, but she didn't know I was still using heroin every day, and things just got really toxic and really bad. Um, and I had a job at this time, even in engineering, and I was driving to Robinson for work. Um, and you know, I'm getting like I'm not a functional addict. Some people can like get high and drunk and still function and do what they got to do. That was never me. If you could hold a job, there was a point I would like look at someone that could just hold a job as like a god because I was just so I couldn't do that. Like I just couldn't do it at the time, and wasn't in me. And so there was this one morning I wake up and I look and it's like 9 o'clock, and I'm supposed to be at work at like 7:30, and I'm like, oh no. And so I call, and they at this point there was some other incidences, you know. They're like, don't even bother coming in, and I'm like, and I wake up at my girlfriend's apartment where I'm living, and I'm like, I'm not taking that for an answer. I'm gonna go in anyway and talk and try to keep my job. So I'm driving down the highway, and I have this like nice kind of souped up car that I built and stuff, and I was into that, and the engine blows up, and I have like no money because I spent it all on drugs. So my car is on the side of the highway. The engine blew up. There's like oil all over the ground. I think it shot a rod
Rod,
through
yeah.
it. Yeah, and I just lost my job. So now I definitely I can't get there, you know, because she was at work or something. And so I, I've, I think I called my dad and he had it towed. And I went back to her place and I called her and told her what had happened. And she's like, you know what? Just get your stuff and get out. And so within a matter of like a couple hour window, I I lose my job, my car blows up, I break up with my girlfriend and I'm homeless, in just a couple hour window. And it was like another low for me, you always sometimes you can feel like you hit rock bottom. Like I was just a monster. Like when I was 19, just sitting there shooting up alone, crying, not wanting to stick this needle in my arm, and then it would hit me and the tears would go away. And I'm just like, oh my God, like I'm just a monster. And this next low hits. And I decided, I can't, there's no good reason for me to be here anymore. I can't do this, man. Like there's no coming back from this. Like these are all the things I'm thinking. Like now I'm homeless. Like I have nowhere to go. I have no job. My car blew up. Nobody wants to be around me. I'm alone, and so I said, I'm gonna end my life. I'm gonna end my life. And so for the rest of the day, I proceeded to gather up as much money as I could. I think I got around $230, something around there. I was able to borrow a car from somebody. I don't want to put that names and stuff out there. This person doesn't even know this ever happened. But I didn't care either. I was going to kill myself in this person's car. And I went downtown and met my dealer. I went to a very well-known parking lot where a lot of addicts go to shoot up in East Liberty. And I took all the bags I got. I got the best deal I could. I took every single stamp bag and managed to get it to fit all in one needle. And I was just like, at this time, I think it was about 4:35 in the afternoon. And I shot it. I didn't even clean up the bags or not. What's it matter? This is it for me. I shot it all and I went out. I don't remember anything. I didn't have any near-death experiences. I have no recollection. The next thing I know is it's about 4:30 in the morning and I come to in the same car I was in with all the stuff on me, needles like just hanging here, and I'm like disoriented. I just remember being enraged. No gratitude.
Because it didn't work.
No, yeah. And I just felt, man, in that moment, and maybe someone out there can relate, but I literally felt like I was in a living hell that I could not escape no matter how hard I tried. There was nothing I could seem to do. And so in that moment, I thought, man, I suck at life so bad, I cannot even successfully kill myself. And that shouldn't be a hard thing to do. That's what I'm thinking to myself in this moment. And I look at my phone, I have like 40 missed calls and like 40 text messages from this now ex of mine. Like, where are you? What are you doing? And even though we just broke up and she kicked me out, but I was supposed to go back there, I guess, to get some things and that. And I never told her like what I did. I just kind of gathered my senses, cleaned things up, and just went back. And I went to rehab for like the first time. I was in some psych wards when I was young. I mean, there was a lot of things, man. I was crazy off the rails and just a lot of things. I had a lot of mental issues, and the drugs I think it was really because of the issue with my parents, but then the drugs and everything that came along with that life just intensified. Nothing was ever dealt with. I never dealt with life on life's terms. Like, as a problem would come, just get high and forget about that. Another problem, forget about, and so, when you're like 5, 10, 15 years into this, those problems that you just never dealt with, it's like, well, I can't deal with that now. It's too much. Like, there's no way. And I couldn't seem to kill myself. I couldn't seem to escape this reality, I just couldn't take it anymore, man. And you'd think I'd have a lot of gratitude for that. I was enraged. Because it's like, what am I going to do? Like, I tried to fix this and I can't even kill myself.
Did you ever wonder throughout all of these failed attempts of your life ending, and I say failed loosely, one was literally failed. You
Yeah.
just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
what your purpose on this earth was. Did you ever sit down and say, okay, I can't be killed because I'm supposed to be here to XYZ?
Not yet. Not yet. Not at that point. Um, a few rehabs later, because I would always go into rehab. I'd do great, be like the star client, or or whatever they call you. And I graduate, and 1 or 2 hours after I got home, I'm high again. And so I would have that pattern. But the last time I went, I decided just to do whatever they told me. So I did like long-term rehab. I went from there to a long-term halfway house. I went from there to a long-term three-quarter house. And I started to, my dad had passed away like a couple of days after I went to the halfway house. And um, I was able to see him one last time though when I was in rehab, which was great because he was old. I mean, he died when he was almost 90. He was just a little bit away from 90, so he lived a life. But I was able to actually make some amends with him at that point, which I'm so grateful for because he never got it. And he just said 3 words, and that's all I needed. And that was the only time he ever said that to me. Was just I told my dad that I know it was me, but it wasn't me. I'm sorry. Like I did a lot of bad things in my family, man. A lot of bad stuff. And he just said, "I understand, son." And I was just like, wow. Like that's all I ever needed to hear from him was just, "I understand, son," because I never got that. And so that was what I needed, and I'm glad for that. But yeah, so I went through life, and I was in NA, the program of Narcotics Anonymous, and I would serve, go and carry meetings into other rehabs and hospital detoxes, and I enjoyed that, and I'd participate a lot and help people, but it hasn't honestly been until the last few years where I started to question that and discover it. Like I'd hear people say, "Man, you've got to be alive for a reason." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. You're right. There's no way God has given me, like, brought me through all these things without some purpose." Like there, where I fell that day when I was 19, a week before to the day, a young boy fell over that same spot and died. And I didn't even hear that till afterwards. Like I guess that was in the news too. And so it's just I don't know what to make of all that. I think I do, but um, there's more leading up to me figuring out a purpose, like meeting my wife and that whole thing, my current wife. So let's go from the three-quarter house. I did all the treatment. So I was in a treatment environment for about 2 years altogether, roughly. And for me, after almost 2 decades of ripping and running on the streets and doing all that, like I needed 2 years in treatment. I needed that. And at times, it wasn't necessarily I was even learning anything new at times, but it was the distance between me and the drugs, because the cravings are real, man. I mean, it took for me about 18 months for like post-acute withdrawal symptom to stop and cravings. And, I could just be having a great day, like 6 months clean, and all of a sudden you get sick again, and it
Wow.
really, and not to mention all the spiritual things that happen. I haven't really touched on that much, but some people it's a bit much for. I don't. It's just my experience, what I've been through. But like I've had demonic attacks for a period of years. Ripped out of my bed at night. Wake up to seances in my room with like demons chanting and burning pentagrams and I mean, there was a lot of spiritual stuff, man. Very things that are burnt into my mind, things that weren't just like a hallucination or a dream. There'd be signs left, like one would go through my window, and the blinds would be all bent up, and they're just bent forever, or like marks around my neck or scratches on me or like my nose almost broken. So I was like, here's what happens. I don't care what anybody says or thinks, man, because like here's my experience of I, I've learned what happens whenever I put substances in me. Every little bit it disconnects me from, some people might call it source or the creator, but God. It disconnects me and God, the relationship. And at a point, it was like I experienced twice in my life, like in my very darkest heroin addiction, a total spiritual death, what I would refer to as a total spiritual death. Meaning there's no good experience or feeling uh, in me or outside of me that I can see, and I'm in such a dark place that it's like just in my day to day, I'd be seeing like shadow figures just running through the house, or I would start to hear like radio stations in my head, and I'm looking everywhere for radios, and I'd bury my head between like pillows, and it won't stop, you know, and I'm like looking up the radio stations, and they don't even exist, you know, like this kind of like spiritual warfare going on. There's things I don't even really want to get into, but there was a lot of dark stuff, man, for years. So taking the drugs, I've learned it severs my connection with my creator. And it was literally like I could see these images in my mind of me putting my hands into my chest and opening myself up to dark, evil. So there's no more like protection. There's no more light in me. And I've effectively opened myself up to these dark forces. Um, and now I've given them legal permission, legal grounds to enter into my life and do what they will with me. And nothing they can do about it, you know? But I do remember many nights calling out Jesus's name. Or I remember at that time in my life, I was still not super experienced as a Christian, but I just remember hearing someone say, just if you ever have like a demonic attack, just say, in Jesus' name, I command you to the abyss. So I'd be like screaming that, in Jesus' name, I command you to the abyss. I command you to the abyss every night. And eventually they would go, they would leave. Um, so the name of Jesus works. And I mean, there's a lot of people that aren't even believers out there that I've heard say, for some reason, you know, when aliens come or when we have demonic, like the name of Jesus works. Um, and it does. So one night, I think one of the worst times, and my mother was there for this, because it was right before I went to the last rehab. And I don't mean to back up a little bit, but I was staying at my mom's because I was homeless, right? And I decided, well, maybe I need help. And that was like what sent me through the last rehab and halfway and three quarter. And it was the night before I was getting ready to go into rehab. And I was laying in her office on a blow up mattress. I was laying on my right side. She had went to bed a little, like a half hour ago. And I'm just like laying there for a few minutes, you know, just trying to kind of clear my mind and drift off. And I hear my mom go, Raymond, Raymond. And I'm like, what, mom? And nothing. And that's not unlike my mom to call, you know, to call you and then not answer. And you're like, what? They want you to come there, you know? And I'm like, I just laid down like 5 minutes ago. And she's like, Raymond, Raymond. And I'm like, what, mom? Silence. So I'm like, let's see how far I can push it, you know? And she calls me a third time. And so I'm like, so I get up and I go into her room and I can hear her like lightly snoring. She's sound asleep. And every hair on my body stood up in that moment. And I knew, because I already had experience with it. I said, I know what this is. I know that demons can mimic voices of anybody. And so I'm like, all right, I'm just going to ignore this. Like internally, I know exactly what this is. I'm going to ignore it. And so I went and I laid back down on my right side, pulled the sheets up. And I'm just like kind of there. And in the corner where it's darker, it gets real dark in this corner. And the shadow starts to go upwards and it goes onto the ceiling. And I'm just like, I've been through so many things at this point. I'm just like, just ignore it, just ignore it. And within like faster than you could blink, this shadow entity goes whoosh, right into my ribs on my left side. I could feel it come into me. And I'm screaming bloody murder, man. I am screaming and I'm paralyzed in terror. Like it's terror like Nothing else has ever come close to producing it's not fear, it's sheer terror, paralyzed, and you're so overwhelmed in terror. It's like you don't even know what to do. And I'm just screaming, and my mom thought like I was being murdered or something. She came in the room, and she's just like shaking me, and finally this thing like leaves me, because my mom's a very spiritual woman. She really is. I mean, she prays a lot, but her house has always had a light energy to it. It's always been like
Safe
serene.
space.
Yes, yes. And she's like, "What is going on?" She's like, "I thought someone was in here murdering you. You're like blood curdling screams." And I told her what had happened. She's just like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, I can't wait for you to go to rehab. This isn't the first time. Like, there's been other times I've been pounding on her door like 3, 4. I'm like, "Mom, I just got attacked by a demon, and it said this to me." And
So she's blaming it on your addiction.
yeah, yeah. And a lot of people were like, "Man, you got to lay off the drugs." And I mean, there's been periods of time where I've been sober for months and I've had things like that happen. I mean, it doesn't anymore, but not like that. I might have a dream occasionally, but I know, okay, let me take a look at like what's going on. Is there something in my life is there a door I've opened somehow? Because I'm not a perfect person. And for me, I've always seemed to have like an affinity to the spiritual things for whatever reason. I think that ties into my purpose. But so that thing, it tried to possess me that night. It tried to possess me, but for whatever reason, it either chose not to or couldn't. I'm not sure. But so I went, to rehab and all that, and so I ended up getting a place out of the three-quarter house, and I was with another girl then, and it wasn't actually, that relationship did me a lot of good. It taught me how to love and be like how to accept love and to love back, because from the streets, it hardens your heart, and I had to turn into somebody that I wasn't, just to survive out there, because like slightest sign of weakness and you're devoured.
Yeah. And you probably don't trust anybody either.
No trust whatsoever in a soul. No, you can't, because if you trust someone, you could die.
Yeah.
So like you literally can't trust anybody in that life, and so I had to learn how to trust, and I had to learn how to love. I had to learn how to accept help. And as soon as one thing good would happen in my life, I'm like, what's the catch? Like something horrible is about to happen. It didn't matter. And so I had to like get used to accepting good in my life. And that period of time where I was getting clean and all that, and then I had that relationship after I got out of the three-quarter house and everything. It taught me like, okay, like they're allowed to happen to me. Like good things can happen to me, and there not be a catch. And the more I started to kind of like entertain those ideas, the more I kind of started to ease into this new life. Like, okay, like I didn't do anything bad. Something good happened. Like there's nothing going to come of that. If something bad does happen, it doesn't mean it's related to anything anymore. Like I've changed my life. I'm on the straight and narrow. And so I'm like 4.5 years into this sobriety journey, and things fizzled out with that girl. I ended up moving in with a guy who was supposed to be in recovery too. I moved everything in. The like third night I'm there, he's like having these like homeless women come in, and they're getting high and doing drugs. I can't even use the bathroom there, and they're nodded out, shooting up and stuff. And I'm like, dude, I thought you were in recovery, man. Like, I'm about this life. Like, I can't be around that. I thought we talked about this. Like, I don't care if you get high, but don't tell me you're clean before, And so within a matter of like, I made the decision, I got to get out of here. Within like 3 days, I'm out. And it's like winter at this time. I moved, I think it was 5 or 6 times in that 1 year. It was just like, there was a lot of chaos, and stay with my mom for a little bit because I'm clean now. She'll accept me back in her home, and got a job, and things went south with the job. They weren't getting contracts, and they said, we can't afford to pay people right now, and so we got to let you go. I was literally walking out the door. I had literally one foot out the door, leaving to go sign a new lease agreement for my own place. And they're like, stop, we have to have an emergency meeting. And they brought me back and told me, we don't think it's fair. You're about to go sign a lease, and we might not be able to pay your salary, so we're just going to let you go now. So then my mom was like, well, you still had this plan to move out and get on with your life, so you still got to go. So there I am, 4.5 years clean, homeless again, and I'm just like, I'm like, man, there has got to be something I'm doing to get these results in life. Like, it's not they lost funding, it's not like all the jobs I've lost and all the things that have happened. And I'm like, there's something that I'm not aware of that is a pattern in my life that is getting me these are my results, right? Nobody else's results, they're my results. And there's something I did to get right where I'm at. So I remember standing on a sidewalk, oddly enough, down in Natrona near where I fell over, because a friend let me sleep on her floor for a little bit in her dining room for like I think 2 months, fortunately. Like, so I'm homeless and I'm like trying to figure out what to do. I'm like, well, I had a car and I'm making the car payments, so at least I have that to sleep in. And then I talked to her, she let me, and she has like an autistic son and stuff. Not easy thing for her at all. And I'm unemployed. I couldn't collect unemployment at that time. I didn't have like enough time in or something. And so yeah, I found a job, doing some landscaping with another guy in recovery and for a few bucks, a few times a week whenever it wasn't raining and stuff, and able to keep my car and a gym membership and a little bit of food, and my phone. I was able to do that.
The basics.
Yeah, the bare minimum, but hey, I knew I needed a gym, I needed a phone, I needed my car, I needed food. Like, for me, that's what I needed. And so I eventually started kind of looking at myself. And it's odd because at that time when I moved back with my mom, I was like trying to date some girls. I wanted to find a partner, like a life partner, like a for real one. And I had met this amazing woman, and I had a job, and I was like staying with my mom, trying to get back on my feet when I met her. Like a week later, we had our first date scheduled. And so I go to the first date, and at this time now I'm homeless. I'm living in another woman's home, and I have like just the money in my bank account, and not like, that's it. It wasn't a lot. And that woman ended up becoming my wife today. Yeah. So she saw something in me because I told her, there's some things about me you might want to know.
Yeah.
And I said, but I want you just to get to know me for me.
You have a little baggage.
Yeah. But I'm like, I just want you to get to know me for me before I say what's going on in my life or
Yeah.
what's been. And she couldn't have that. And so on our second date, she's like, look, either you got to tell me what's up with you, or like I'm moving on, And I was so impressed by this woman. There was such an immediate,
Just like understanding and compassion
yeah,
and acceptance.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and love. Like the first hour I spent with her, I fell in love, and I really questioned, I'm like, is this lust or is this
Yeah.
love? And like I prayed about it, and I really examined that, and I'm like, somehow, man, I fell in love with this girl in the first hour of being with her, and
Wow.
I just knew. Like they say, when you know, and I used to hate when people say that, but for me, I experienced that, and I'm very fortunate. I feel very fortunate that I got to experience that.
Yeah.
So she took a chance on me. I ended up um, getting another job, and she had asked me. We were together just like a few months. Like, we had a couple dates. Like, not even 2 weeks, we decided to make it official, and then a month or two after that, she asked me, because she knew my situation, and she asked me if I wanted to like move in with her to be safe, And I'm like, I don't really want to screw things up. This is like so good, I was really scared, but I did, and man, it's been the best thing. So it's like our second or third date, something like that. Second. It was a third date, I think, that I told her the stuff. But the second date, I just wanted to spend time with her, And she's like, "Well, I'm going to church tonight. Do you want to come?" And I practiced with the Jehovah's Witnesses for 4 years. I was never baptized under them, but I studied with them. And in that religion, you don't even like step foot in a church. Like, it's totally off limits, because it's all false.
Yeah.
And so I have this going on in my head, and I'm like, oh man, well, I guess I don't have to listen. I can just be with her. So I go in, and at the end of the service, she's like, I think they have a recovery group here. And I'm like, really? I said, yeah, like a faith-based recovery group. I'm like, oh, so I'll look into it. And so I did. And that sent me, I didn't know what that one question was going to do, but turns out they didn't have the group anymore. It was not running for quite a while. And she said, wouldn't that be something if you led that group one day? And I said, huh, never thought of that. I'm like, yeah, that'd be something, And so looking back, I can see now I'm the leader of that group today. It sent me on like an 18-month thing of like, they just put so much trust in me. They're like, look, here's the program we had. You go through it like with a fine tooth comb, make any changes, do whatever you want, and present it to me, and let's talk about it. And I did, and they were just like, wow, like, all right, and you can lead the group. And so there I am, and now it's turned into Ray's Recovery, which I have my own podcast and things, and I've helped quite a few people that have been like me come in. And so from a faith perspective, when I can look back and see like all the pieces and how they fit together. And Steve Jobs has a quote that I like. And he said that you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back. So you have to trust that somehow in the future, the dots will connect. And, I'd think like, how could anything possibly good come from all that? How, like, that seems so senseless. Like I did it to myself with my own hand, How could anything good, like, I didn't even know I was going to process all that and like kind of get rid of my guilt and my shame. And
Did you feel like you didn't deserve anything good?
at one point, absolutely. That was something I had to really fight. Yeah. Like, for sure. I definitely felt, I try to take myself out, Like, I definitely felt like there was no need or use for me to be here. I honestly felt like I would be doing people a favor by just removing myself from the equation. So yeah, I guess I didn't even feel like I deserved to live. Yeah. So
Now, on the flip side of that, did you ever play victim mentality? Like, why is this happening to me? Why is this such a low point? Why do I keep getting punished?
yes, all the time in my like active addiction and struggling back and forth all the time.
Even though you're making the decisions.
Exactly. Right. Yes. The whole world was against me. It was like in my hometown, man, if I was driving and the cops saw me, it doesn't matter if they had to go wait up, they would always come and stop me, pull me over, yank me out of the car, search me, like there would be times I'd be visiting a friend and honestly not even doing anything wrong. I'd leave. As soon as my front tires would hit the pavement out of their driveway, there's like 6 SUVs and cop cars surround me like, Mr. Chobanian, what are you doing here today? I'm just like, man, I'm just visiting a friend, dude. Like,
Playing
like
video games,
yeah,
chill.
yeah.
Yeah.
But they knew what I was about. And so like I was constantly looking over my shoulder and I was like, oh, of course they're going to pick on me again. And, but they knew, I would get called in for like robberies at gas stations and stuff. They're like, that's you. I'm like, that doesn't even look like me. And they'd think, well, you know who it is, like there was all
quite the reputation.
Oh yeah.
How long did it take? Actually, I want to have a drink first.
Yeah. Sounds good.
And we're not drinking anything on the wall.
No, probably
because I'm
not
going
a
to
great
honor
idea.
your sobriety.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be the cause of
Amen, man.
whatever the next thing could have been, right?
Right.
So instead, we're going to have some supplementation from Project One Nutrition.
That's
I have Overkill pre-workout and I have Amino Evolution. You could pick one or the other or both.
I would say Amino Evolution.
Okay. You don't want any pre-workout for our discussion?
No. What flavor is the pre-workout?
It's called Wolf's Blood.
Ah, okay.
I'm gonna give you a little bit.
Okay, I'll have a tiny.
I'm not peer pressuring you.
Not a full. I'll take a tiny, just a little. Just for flavor. That's cool. Yeah. So just a little caffeine.
I'm gonna do some too. I'm not gonna be that guy. Take a little bit of this. Trust me.
Like I said, I do have a curiosity. So.
Those days are over, buddy. Let's not be curious anymore.
Awesome. Okay.
I'm gonna mix you up here. Have a frother over here.
Oh, very nice. Those are handy. I use one every day.
I only use it for this. Ironically enough.
They work like a charm. Elevator
Background
music.
music. Yeah. So yeah, after we sip this, I'm gonna ask you about your reputation.
Okay.
All right.
Fortunately, it's not the same. Fortunately.
I mean, could it have gotten any worse? Cheers, buddy.
Cheers. Very good.
Good
Very
cocktail.
nice. Yeah, not bad.
Aminos, little
Oh, dragon's blood or wolf's blood.
wolf blood, caffeine.
Nice.
You like it?
I do.
All right.
Very good.
You're gonna need it because we're arm wrestling later.
Yeah.
Just kidding. No, I'm not kidding. We are gonna arm wrestle later, but. So your reputation, how long did it take to break that reputation? How long were you living under that identity where you were getting followed by the cops and getting accused for robbing stores?
Probably like I'd say about the last, like, well, not the last, but I'd say like about a good 6 years at least. I mean, it was a little longer, but when it got real bad, like anytime they'd see me and getting accused for robbing gas stations and stuff, that part was about 6 years, I'd say. Yeah, but you know,
Did you ever start to accept it? Like, I did this to myself.
at one point, obviously, I have, yes. There's been a point, absolute, like total, because I learned I had to. I had to take full acceptance of everything, you know. Even now, when I was 12, my parents separated. There was nothing I could do about that. That might have been the catalyst, but after a point, man, it's like I was an adult, you know. Like I had to start to take responsibility, and I think like I had definitely done that to a degree, but then when I was 4.5 years clean and sober and found myself homeless, was when I really said, okay, like I really got to take full accountability and responsibility for my life.
Because you were doing all the right things,
Yeah.
and you're still
Yeah.
getting punished,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's what it felt like. Yeah. Like what? I just remember being like, man, like, how does this happen? You know, like, but one thing I held on to that I think is useful for the audience for sure is I did have a sponsor. One of my sponsors said, as long as you don't pick up the first one, whatever situation, must get better. It must. And he drove that home. Like it must get better as long as you don't pick up the first one. And so in that stint of homelessness, that idea, I held on to it for dear life. Like, okay, I hear his voice echo in my head. Like, I know as long as I don't pick up, because if there's any time to do it, now it would seem like a good excuse, you know?
Yeah.
This must get better, and it will. Like as long as I don't pick up, I want this to get better, so I'm definitely not going to pick up because there's a promise that if I don't, it must, by all means, it must get better. That's the idea I held on to. That might not be true for everybody. I don't know. Maybe things get worse for some people, but for me, I held on to that and decided that was how it was going to be.
No, that goes for all forms of addiction, not just drugs, not
Yeah.
just alcohol.
Yeah.
It could be porn. It could
Yep.
be
Gambling.
lust. It could be a slew of other things.
Mhm.
You know, you say no that first time, it's going to get better. You do it again,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Because we go back to like a spiritual door or like a permission, like a legalistic permission. If the second I take that again, it's like reopening the door.
Yeah.
You know, and it's gonna come back stronger the next time.
No.
Yeah. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
making you too uncomfortable.
No.
No. Okay.
It's hard to make me uncomfortable at this point. No, that's not a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I'm not.
I've
not taking
heard-
it as such.
I've heard a lot. And yeah, it was a lot, but I'm okay.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good.
So Ray, did you ever get a sense of redemption? Like, now I'm finally healed.
So there was definitely a period of redemption. I almost realize it as it's happening. Like there's some things in life that I started to get like sharper, you know, like I started to have awareness, self-awareness and awareness of the things going on around me. So that period where I came back to live with my mom for a period, and then found myself homeless at 4.5 years sober. Like I was able to see that God brought me back to my hometown, which I did not want to come back. And I certainly didn't want to live with my mom again at the age of, I think I was like in my 32 or something like that, you know?
It's a
Yeah.
bad look.
Yeah, not good. And I would run into people in my hometown, and including people I used to use with, that were still doing the same thing. And they just couldn't believe that it was me. They're like, "You're Ray?" You know, like I didn't even, they couldn't even recognize me from who I used to be, which is pretty spectacular to me. Like it's wild to think that like you can't even recognize somebody because I was so strung out,
Yeah.
you know? And I'm not like saying that like braggy or anything. I'm just saying like that's like wow, like I was that bad, you
Hmm.
know, because we can't see ourselves, but everybody else can. So I would run into people from old congregations I was in, police officers, old using buddies. During this time, I was in my hometown, and I, I think them just seeing me was like a redemption. They could clearly see I was a different person. And so I was lifting at the local YMCA, and that's just where my hometown cops would lift too. And one night I was there in the locker room, and wouldn't you know it, come walking in right beside me, the locker right next to mine. I noticed him, and I hurried up and left. And I'm like, man, I don't want to run into this guy. It was a cop that I had many bad run-ins with, um, in particular. And so I got my workout, and I'm like, okay, you know, hopefully I can like just sneak out of here and not see him. And so I was like, getting a shower, got out of the shower, and I'm like naked, you know, drying off, and here he comes again, right in beside me, and I'm like, he's like, how you doing? You must be doing okay again. He said, every time you're at the gym, I know you're doing good. But he's like, when you're not at the gym, I know your life's in shambles. And I'm like, I said, I'm doing good. I said, you know, I got X amount of time clean, you know, yada, yada. And I was able to make an amends with him right there. And I even got a picture with him. And he's like, you know, this would have never happened if you would have been still who you used to be.
Right.
So that was like a great sense of redemption in my life. And like I didn't sign up for that. That wasn't my intention. It was just like God moving in my life in ways that I was starting to be aware of.
Yeah.
You know, like he's obviously, people and myself have always said like obviously there's been like some angelic protection over you because someone might survive one of those things, or and people don't even survive one of those things, and you have like all these things. The police in my hometown would refer to me as the cat with 9 lives.
I
Yeah, and
wonder
they're like, and
why.
you're running short on lives, man, you know,
Yeah.
like yeah. So that was the period of redemption, and that would kind of start all the good that's current in my life, you
Yeah.
know, like the recovery group, my wife, and so yeah, I mean, we could lead into anything there.
Yeah. I mean, this is your stage. Whatever you want to talk about.
All right, cool. So moved in with my at the time girlfriend, my
Now,
wife
wife. Yeah.
now. Started this recovery group, and this was before COVID, and decided to start on Zoom meetings. So started there'd be a 3, 4, 5 people that would show up on the Zoom meetings. And then in September of that year, we first in-person group, and most of the people that were coming online weren't from like around, so they were like some people from like other states and stuff even that heard about the group, however they heard about it, I'm not sure. But um, the first in-person group, I'm like, man, I hope somebody comes, you know. And I'm just like preparing, and you know, and I'm doing like professional, like getting mentored and stuff at this point, because I'm like kind of going up the levels of like, okay, greater awareness, you know, how do I take responsibility for my, how do I change my results in life? I'm really starting to, I started my own business, you know, that's another thing coming up here soon that I could get into. But so I'm just like, okay, if nobody comes, I'm just going to pretend that the room is full, and I'm going to run this group as if it was. It's great practice. I'll be able to better serve people. I'm not going to let that bother me if nobody comes, because I know sometimes you just have to stick with things for a while and just do it, you know? Everybody thinks like, oh, guess what? I started a group. Now there's going to be a room full of like 50 people or something, or
Yeah.
100 people, whatever. And um, that takes work sometimes, most of the time. I mean, very seldom does it seem like you just do something and it flourishes. Like,
Sure.
so that stick to it. And we're also, I believe we're tested. And this kind of ties into me going back and saying, how could anything ever good ever come out of all the crap I did to myself and have been through? Um, and so one woman comes in that night and I'm like, okay, cool, we're here. So I planned the structure of the group for a group, not just a single person. So I'm like, oh, so right away I'm having to improvise because now all the stuff I have, it doesn't work for one person. It works for a group. And I'm like, okay. So I'm like on the fly now. And this woman, she was not in a good spot. And I didn't know how bad it was, you know? And so I just started showing her some things and kind of just sharing and asking her about her and where she's at and what she would like to do with her life. And, you know, just trying to get an idea, let her say whatever she had to say. And so it's me and a woman, you know, so that's already uncomfortable. And, and just in a room, and I'm like on the fly trying to think of how to help one person. And so like God brought me one. And for a while, for some months, it was just her and I. What I didn't know is about a year and a half later, I mean, the group grew at that point. I mean, it's been over 3 years now, I think. So yeah, so I think this September will be the fourth anniversary of the in-person group. So about a year and a half after that first time she came, there was a handful of people in the group at this point, and she had said during one of the meetings, you know, I made a decision that night. She said I had tried everything. I was tired of hiding the drinking from my husband and things, and um, I said to myself, if whoever is on the other side of those doors cannot help me, that's it. I'm done. I'm giving up. If they can't help me tonight, whoever it is over there on the other side of those doors, I'm giving up on myself.
Wow.
And man, the hair on my body stood up. I didn't know that, you know, and there's a great lesson there.
Well, there's a lesson there, but I have a question.
Yeah.
Knowing that there are people that think that, do you add pressure to yourself to help everybody?
No. There have been periods in time where I have started to do that. Uh, like the first guy I ever sponsored, um, started off with a blast and then just kind of like dropped off, you know. And so I was talking to my elders in recovery that had more experience than me, and they said, Ray, like, you are simply a guide. You just like he would say to me, like, Ray, is your recovery your responsibility? I said, well, 100%. He's like, so it's nobody else's job to make sure you do whatever you got to do in your recovery. I said, no. He's like, great. So as a leader, as a sponsor, a mentor, all you are is a guide. You can show people the path, but you can't walk it for them, and you can't drag them down it either, you know? Like, so how I look at things today, I still hold on to that. I think that's a really great thing I learned. I don't put pressure on myself. The only thing I do really take like maybe a little pressure on myself is like I never want to lead someone down a wrong path or give someone a suggestion that would hurt them or lead them astray. And especially when it comes to the Word of God, like I never, and so that makes me have to really learn and study and have an open mind and heart. And maybe I don't know everything. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't understand this. And that's definitely happened to me, you know. So I have to have an open mind myself before I'm like telling other people something that
Yeah.
could trip them up, or maybe some advice that didn't isn't good advice, you
What
know.
would you think of an example of that would be?
Um,
Did you ever have that
I
happen?
had it happen about a year ago. There was something because I knew it. You know, maybe it wasn't even quite a year ago, but it came up this topic in our group about being self-reliant versus self-sufficient. And as a Christian believer, believing in Jesus, just a follower of Jesus, I really don't religion that term. You know, I'm just trying to follow Christ in His ways. You know, that's really how I look at it. Because I've been in religion, I've seen just different things, and you can get into lost in the weeds on like following things to a T, and just like the Pharisees, when Jesus came, they were like so set on the law, and Jesus healed someone on the Sabbath, and and it's like, well, like if one of your sheep fell down this hole on the Sabbath, would you not rescue it?
Yeah, there's rules on
Yeah.
how to follow.
Right.
Yeah,
So you can get lost in the weeds. So I'm just
sure.
like, okay, who was Jesus? How did he live? And how do I emulate that in my life? And so self-reliance and self-sufficiency came up, and it was like this thing. And I'm like, well, yeah, it's great to be self-reliant and just self-sufficient. And it's kind of a tricky thing, but I kind of told some people that, and maybe to some people you think opposite or this isn't a thing, but for me, um, we can't do anything without God. So, and that's in the Bible. I can do nothing apart from God. And based on my own experiences of severing my connection with Him, I have found that to be true. So looking back, I've seen where all the pieces connect. Like I went through these things for a purpose to teach me. Like you have to put silver in the fire to refine it in the hottest part of the flame, you know. And it's refined when the silversmith sees his reflection in the silver.
Yeah.
And so you have to go through the fire to be refined. And so heck, even just with an understanding of God or the Father, the Son, the whole like so anyway, I would say, yeah, you should be self-sufficient, self-reliant. And then through my studying and praying, and I'm like we should be relying on God for everything. And he says that apart from him, we can do nothing. And I've experienced being completely severed from him and being a shell of him. I mean, the wind would blow and I would just crumble, man. I couldn't handle anything. I was
Yeah.
dead empty. I mean, it felt like my skin was brittle and paper thin, and that was it.
I could see how that advice on the surface could seem like great advice,
Sure.
right?
Me too.
Like you have to take accountability. You have to rely on no one but yourself. But
Yes.
with the spiritualism side of it, that's not exactly the case, right?
Yes. Right.
And that's what you mean by, I'd say, leading someone down the wrong path.
Yeah, like you're good, man. It's all you. You got it all. You can handle it. And so if I took that same approach, the people in my group that maybe relapse or that maybe fall away and eventually go down another bad path, like, well, Ray, look what you did, like, but I, like
Yeah.
you led that person that doesn't make sense and it
Yeah.
doesn't work and it's not the truth. More importantly, it's not the truth. Each
Yeah.
person's responsible. Now, I'd never want to hurt somebody or beat them up that would kind of give them a nudge down a path, especially at any point, and especially like fragile states,
Yeah.
people in a fragile state. So yeah, I mean, that's one example, and that might not be great for some, but to me, it's great,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without naming names, is there a student or a client of yours that really stands out as a great success story? I'm sure you have a lot of them, but is there one that just right off the cuff
Yeah.
stands out?
The first woman who came to
That
the
woman,
group.
yeah.
Yeah, because man, she's got over 3 years sober now. She's a totally different person. She's become a leader and a mentor, and she helps women who are struggling with alcoholism, addiction. She started her own women's study group. She's active. She supports people. Like her relationships have changed. Things in her family have improved. She's really worked through a lot. I mean, because we all have some kind of traumas. I don't care who you are. There's something from childhood, and I think everyone has something that shaped and affected them from the childhood. And as adults, it's easy to bury that and not process it or look at it. And for me, there was a root. And until I got to the root, and I wasn't even aware of what it was, but I had to do some real deep soul searching to be like, okay, and like really think back on my life and events and things that were said to me or that I said and responses and fine detail. And I figured out where it started. And there was an event in my childhood that seemed harmless and innocent, but I was in a position where I was overwhelmed and I didn't know what to do. And I had my first panic attack when I was a very little kid. And I later had like panic disorder. I mean, there was a whole list of mental things I didn't get into. But like I said, I was in a couple psych wards. I mean, obviously there was some stuff in the
Sure.
drugs and psychosis. I mean, there was, because stuff messes you up. But um, and I said, okay, so when I'm in a situation where I don't understand this, I don't know the solution. I think as men too, we tend to want to fix things, or like your wife comes to you with a problem. Okay, well, here's what we can do. It's like, no,
Guilty.
yeah.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe they usually she just wants me to hear her.
Yep.
And if she's looking for a solution, it's like, trust
She'll
me,
ask you.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, she would be the one. And I'm saying that because that's very valuable for the audience. And especially if someone is hopefully not, but if you are in that position struggling, there is a root. And this woman was able to look at those things in her life and face them and start to unpack that and process it to kind of like release that. So anytime we go through a great change that's positive, first there's a struggling or a warring, either within you internally or relationally, and then there is a process of letting go. Because okay, so we can struggle with this thing and decide I'm done with that, but if I'm still holding on to it, I'm carrying it with me everywhere I go. So then the second step is there's a letting go of it, and then the third step is a celebrating or a rejoicing. So it's like woohoo, and then you just keep going through that process with life as things come up. So, and she did
Yeah.
that, and we all celebrate. That's another thing, man. Like we all celebrate each other. We rejoice. We celebrate periods of sobriety. We give gifts and might go out to dinner. You know, but just trying to show people that I didn't think, and I didn't understand people that could do anything and have fun, not being under the influence of something. And so showing people that hey, life, like, yeah, it's not always just about digging deep into your psyche and yourself and looking at your stuff and learning. And it's like we can live now, and that's why we're getting clean and sober, so we can live a full, plentiful, bountiful life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
and,
beautiful,
and,
man.
and service of others, because that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. About 30 minutes ago, I asked you if you were struggling to realize what your purpose was. You feel
Yes.
like you found that now, right?
Yeah. So here's the thing. The to kind of cut to the end and then give you the up to that point. I have found, discovered, uncovered that my purpose is to help people in addiction. And as a recovering addict, someone who's kind of like found his way out of the fire, I would pray and I'd ask God, like, because I just felt this pull, like all these events, like meeting my wife, and I wasn't even sure about her at first. I'm like, I don't know about this girl, you know what I mean? And she's like the most beautiful, amazing woman, literally, that I've ever known. I mean, I feel like the luckiest man in the world. She's just a beautiful person inside now, and just seeing, and then like, oh, going to a church, like I don't step foot. Even though I wasn't a practicing Jehovah's Witness, I still had that, paradigm,
Yeah.
and going in there, and then hey, I heard they had I would have never I would have never even thought of that there, and bringing one person in, and just all the things in my past that trained me, you know. I see it, and I think it's the best way to look at it, is it's all a training. But yeah, I would say the purpose is to help people in addiction to get out of it. And through my prayer, I had a plan for my life of what I wanted to do, and this is also part of the Christian walk. Is, Jesus said, like, if you want to gain your life, you must die to yourself, and be born again. Never made sense to me, but Ray had plans for Ray's life. I wanted to do an impossible thing and be a car designer for a Lamborghini, and you have to be Italian and live in Italy and speak Italian, and they won't even consider it. So, and I'm like, but I can do it. Like, I thought that would be like the coolest job. Yeah.
Totally would be. That would be my dream job too.
That's pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so I'm like in the engineering field and design, and I went to school for that and everything, and these plans for my life, and then I feel like God's calling me to do this thing. And I said, but I just got out of that. And you want me to go back into the fire with other people? What if they like suck me down? What if I'm not strong enough? And there I am again, relying on myself, instead of like God and his Holy Spirit and his strength, and I have found time and time again in my life that this verse of the Bible to be true, that when I come to the end of myself, like in my weakness, God's strength is made perfect. So just full reliance on God, man. Starting a business, that's for me, that's been such a faith walk, because I was just a homeless addict from the streets. I never thought I'd have a business, and I do today. And just like, okay, God, I don't know, man. I don't even know. I didn't even know like about taxes and registering with things, and I had no like help, or I just like, I'm gonna start a business, you know what I mean? And it's just like there's no money coming in. Oh boy, like this was over COVID, I started it, and after 2 months I'm like, I don't think I'm going back to work. Maybe I should see what I'm gonna do. And I started a business, and but all of that um has just been total reliance on God. And when there's nothing else I can do, that's where I find myself, is I have nowhere else to turn. It's kind of like the foxhole prayers sometimes. Like, I don't believe in God, I don't believe, but then when the bombs are dropped, it's like, oh God, please get me out of here alive. I swear I'll do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Not that I ever really had like a disbelief. I've always believed. It's interesting. I'm very glad I never struggled with that personally, but that's just that's for me, man.
Yeah.
It's my own view and everything. But I mean, I do have a business, but it's expensive, and there's ups and downs in business. It's not always like great.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So like, it's a whole new thing. And it has really strengthened my relationship with God and reliance on him. Just like, man, he's good. He delivers. His word is true. His promises come to be. And
Yeah.
yeah, man. So that's my purpose. And that's kind of how I saw it. And then I realized it hit me like, wow, the God that I serve and that I know took all the ugly and bad and he turns it for good. And that's biblical. He
Yep.
takes the ugly and turns it into something beautiful. He uses it for good. He can use what the enemy meant for evil, and he turns it for good. And I realized that. And so then I'm like going deeper into my thoughts, and I'm like, this was a training. I was just being trained, but now it can be argued, well, you chose to do those things, so was God making you choose? No, he took all that as a training. He used it for good,
Yep.
So I said, well, so for me to justify this horrible life I used to live and all this, like, how do you ever get past or make sense of any of that? I've been able to kind of realize I've been trained in like the worst of the worst. So if someone comes to me that's like the mother, the soccer mom who drinks, every night, that hides it, to the strung out, heroin addict or crack addict that's living in a trap house, I know how to handle that
Yeah.
now. And because I've been refined enough to know how to deal with these things. And I know it's worked for me, and I've seen what's worked for other people, and it's the same thing. It's like the problems may vary vastly, and the behaviors may vary, but our nature is exactly the same. It's kind of like the saying, how you do one thing is how you do all things.
Yeah.
I mean, you could take that in a couple of different perspectives, but still similar. So yeah, I'm like, well, so this was training. I'm very well equipped. God's going to bring whoever he wants to, whether they believe or not. I'm not really concerned when they come to me, like, and I'm not trying to force beliefs on anybody. Sure. I'm like, the group is like this, come, even if, you're just hurting and you don't really have a desire, just come. Like, if you allow us, can we just like pray over you? And if not, that's fine. We won't. There's nothing forced, but we're going to read some scripture. We're going to pray. You don't have to pray with us. Nothing's forced. And hopefully people will come to have their own personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And if not, well, hopefully they can still get some value from the group and get their life together, because you never know down the road what may come of that. My job is just to guide and plant a seed and then the Holy Spirit does the work. It's not Ray doesn't save anybody. I've had people say, "Oh, you've saved me." I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. I don't. I would not
You
want
don't want
that.
that.
No,
Yeah.
I haven't saved anyone, man. Like, and I refuse to ever accept that from anybody. Like,
Yeah.
and not even in disrespect. Just like, look, I'm just doing. The reason I help people is because I'm trying to follow God's call in my life and what He's asking me to do.
You're the guide,
Yes.
just like the other person said to you, right? The elder
Yes.
said you're there as a guide.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what you're doing.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So I don't put the like pressure on me. Uh, I do my best. You know, I take it very, very seriously. I have a passion for it. Um, and I'm always available to like talk to people and help people. I talk to people all the time. I mean, we have a group chat. I send insights every morning and it's constantly trying to feed and encourage, you know. And it's been, man, the people at my wedding weren't anybody I knew from my past. They were all the members of my recovery
How
group.
amazing is that? Yeah.
Full circle, man.
Yeah.
And at the beginning of the group, you know, we always say like unity in the support group is essential for our recovery, and we'll experience this unity in our not only in the group but our individual lives. And then here we are, all at my wedding, and this unity. And we have like this beautiful picture of all of us. I mean,
Wow.
it's just like all these beautiful, really good-looking people dressed real nice. This beautiful background, and they're all smiling, happy, and clean.
That's amazing.
And if I would have been successful in killing myself, it's hard to think like none of that would have happened. Maybe some of these people would have went and killed themselves. You know, I don't know. I don't know what would have, but I don't want to know, and I don't have to.
You don't have to.
Right.
Yep.
But yeah.
Well, that's beautiful. I love what you're doing. I love your purpose. I love the passion. I'm going to link all of the information about this group in the video description. So
Please do.
if you need help, if you know somebody that needs help, there is help out there. You are not alone in this. Ray felt like he was alone. So reach out for help. You're not weak if you ask for help. Speaking of weak, we're going to arm wrestle. How's that for a
That sounds
for a
good.
segue?
That sounds good.
Now, Ray rolled in here making excuses.
Yes, I did.
Right off the bat. He said he has a bum labrum in his left arm.
Right.
I guess I'll have to just take his word for it. So for the first time in Barbells and Bourbon podcast history, we're going to arm wrestle left-handed.
Making history.
We are making history. And my left arm is my bum arm because I have a herniated disc in my neck. But we're gonna be just fine.
I don't want to hurt you.
You're not gonna hurt me. I just might go down easy.
I might too. This is my weak arm.
Now I'm gonna ask you a question as we do this.
Okay.
You start when you're ready.
Okay.
Go ahead. Oh. All right, Ray. If your dad's looking down on you right now, what do you think he would say to you?
I think you would say, "Good job, son. I'm proud of you."
Has he ever said he loved you
Yes.
as a kid?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
Got a good left arm.
Not bad. It's not bad for a weak arm. No, I do. All right, we're good. We'll be in here all
I think you
day.
got me on that, man.
Yeah, I mean, he has every right to be proud of you, and you have done good.
Thank you. Thanks, man.
And we talked about purpose, and this show has a purpose. I don't know what every guest that sits there is going to talk about. I'd say 90% of the conversations I've had have completely caught me off guard. I've known some highlights. I got the bullet point items from you for
Yeah.
15 minutes on the phone.
Yeah.
That was it. Every person that sits in that seat, and I'm not saying addicts only or those who have been divorced, there's no buckets here that are being filled with, the only people that can help have to deal with these things. Every person that sits in that seat can help somebody through their life experiences, right?
Yep. 100%.
And my purpose is to give you the space to talk about it, right? I've brought family members back together that hadn't spoken in a long time. I've employed people just through connections
That's
of
awesome.
people seeing things. I've heard things such as I pretty much saved somebody's life
Wow.
and I didn't even know it.
Yeah. Wow.
But it's crazy. You know, you give someone a microphone and a comfortable space to talk, you don't know what's going to come out. And I've had a lot of guests sit in that seat saying they're not very interesting. Meanwhile, they're dropping some heat.
Yeah.
And they are everybody's interesting in their own way. Right?
Agreed. I agree.
I don't expect this crazy traumatic story like you had every time. But
Hopefully
it doesn't
not,
have
yeah.
to be.
No.
Yeah. We hope not.
I hope not everybody goes through those things. Yeah.
But I do respect you, Ray, for sitting here and opening up about all this stuff.
Thanks.
There's a lot of strength, hence the barbells. That's the strength in this conversation. So before we close out, do you have any questions for me?
One question. Why do you do what you do? The podcast.
I just want people to be able to relate to others out there that might be living a similar life or dealing with similar things that they are.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing that you do. You know, you help addicts. Well, I want to help everybody through a story, through a conversation, through your experience in life. You know, addiction aside, you know, I don't want to say that's how you're defined as
Absolutely
an addict,
not.
right?
Yeah.
That's not who you are, Ray.
Right.
You know, you've lived tons of life experiences that could have helped someone beyond the addiction part,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Divorced parents,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
I'm sure there's divorces very common these days. I'm one of them. So, you know, there could have been someone out there that's going through a divorced situation and they don't know how to deal with it and they don't know how to cope with it.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they're thinking of turning to drugs to numb the pain,
Mm-hmm.
but hearing your story is going to make them not do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Hopefully. Yeah.
So that one little example right there is why I do this. And there's probably thousands of other reasons that this can help somebody too.
And in your perspective, what would you say is the reward or the payoff?
The payoff is the text message that I get a day or two later from my guest, for instance, saying so and so reached out to me and apologized for this, or my dad reached out to me and said he was sorry for treating me like this, or a friend of mine that I haven't spoken to in 10 years reached out to me and said that I inspired them. That's the reward, is the feedback that my guests get, or, you know, comments on YouTube. I lived a life like that. I needed to hear this. You know, that's the reward. I'm not making a lot of money from this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm monetized.
Mm-hmm.
Each video might make $3 or $4.
Mm-hmm.
I've made $125 in 14 months. I'm not living off of this.
Sure.
That's
I
not the
get it.
point of this.
Right.
The point is just to help someone in any way possible with your voice. So
Awesome.
that's
Very
why I
good.
do it.
And I guess third question, where do you see this, or would you like to see it go?
I don't. That's a really good question. I've never thought long term.
Hmm.
This is the 58th episode.
It's pretty good.
In episode number 1, I didn't think I'd make it this far. I didn't know what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm just going to start.
Yeah.
And you have to. What did you say? You said you had no experience in X, Y, and Z, but you did it anyway. You learn along the way. You educate yourself,
Yep.
and you just have to do it.
Yep.
Well, that's how this started. I educated myself, bought some equipment that I heard was decent, put the set together to a point where I thought it looked kind of cool.
It does. I like
Learned
it.
how to edit,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a whole nother end of it.
and it's history, you know? So I just, one episode at a time, Ray.
Yeah.
You know, the person coming on after you, that's my next long-term goal. Just get through them. Listen to their story. Have them help somebody through their life story. And then move on to the next one.
That's awesome.
I'd love to have thousands of guests. Let's do the math. That would be like years and years of this podcast. It's not out of the realm of possibility,
Not at all.
right?
Yeah.
So as long as I keep hearing decent feedback that I've helped somebody, this is going to keep going.
Awesome. So I hope and pray that it's very fruitful in many ways like that for you, and you can keep doing it, man, and help a lot of people.
Yeah. I don't know if I told you this, but I've started interviewing the homeless.
Yes, I actually seen a little bit of some of the documentary you were working on.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
I want to keep doing that. It's been hard to get downtown, and it's tough with the weather and everything. Not making excuses, but I want to keep doing that because they have a voice too.
Absolutely.
And most of the ones I've spoken to are there due to bad luck or situations out of their control. Now, granted, there's others like in your situation that you kind of, I don't want to say you chose to be there, but you
put myself
due
there.
to choices, bad choices,
Yep.
put you there. And you can tell pretty quickly those people don't want to talk to you.
Right.
Because they're essentially admitting failure in a way.
Yeah, it's not easy.
It's not easy.
Yeah, I get it.
But the ones that are there just because they were dealt a bad deck, they will open up.
I have a heart for that too, man, because I live right. I mean, I see the homeless people almost every day, you know, and I just think, man, once you're there yourself, it changed my perspective on all that. I looked at people very differently than I do today. But yeah, it's like, man, they're just a human being like me. Like that. Why am I not there and they're not in my car nice and warm, right? You know what I mean? Like things could happen.
I was told one time, and I'll never forget this, we are closer to being homeless than we are to being millionaires.
That's the truth.
Think about it.
Yeah.
One job layoff, one bad medical practice gone wrong, we could be on the street.
Natural disaster.
Anything.
Yeah.
And we don't all have family members or friends that could support us.
Right.
GoFundMe's, the list goes on. It could just be one or two bad situations that put any one of us on the street.
Yeah.
So that should humble you.
It should.
Never take anything for granted.
Right.
Because it could be taken away in a blink of an eye.
Blink of an eye, man.
You know that. I've
do.
been through my own health issues. I was told I shouldn't be alive. It can all be gone in a second. So.
Sure can, man. Life is a gift, and it's given to do something with. And I believe the greatest joy is in service to others. And I used to think that was just a crock of crap that people said, or some religious folk or something. But no, I mean, the greatest joy is found. I mean, you're providing a service to other people. In my view, that's exactly what it is. You're serving people, so helping people. That's great joy.
Yeah. Ever since starting this, Ray, I feel like I've become a better person. I don't feel like I'm doing a lot. You know what I mean? I'm just essentially being an ear to listen.
That's a lot, though. Some people don't get that.
Some people don't care to listen to somebody.
Yeah.
You know, they just want to be heard. They don't want to listen back. It's just like blah, 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 but they don't want to open up themselves to listen. But if you have a purpose, tell me what it is in the comments below. Ray, I appreciate having you, man.
Appreciate you having me and opening your home to me. Thank you.
Deep, deep story. And I appreciate you sharing it.
It's a pleasure. I hope it just helps one person out there.
Yep.
And if anyone wants to get a hold of the Raise Recovery, I got a podcast on YouTube, Raise Recovery, RAISE. It's kind of a play on words, but Facebook group, and you can get a hold of me there.
All of the links are going to be in the description below. Watch one of these episodes, subscribe to the channel. It helps me, it helps Ray, it helps all of my future guests, and I will see you on the next episode of Barbells and Bourbon. Peace. That was good, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you.